Temperance, a word I don't think many people know or talk about much today. The dictionary definition pretty much says moderation. And we sort of live in a world that tells you you need more money, more pleasure, more validation, more everything, right? But temperance asks the harder questions. What if more isn't actually better? This virtue isn't about denying yourself joy, more about having control over your desires instead of being controlled by them. It's about balance, boundaries, and knowing when to stop, because the real power isn't getting whatever you want. It's choosing wisely what you let into your life. Temperance is uncomfortable because it asks you to slow down in a world that's addicted to speed and right now, right here, right now. It asks you to sit with silence when everything else around you is screaming for attention. And a lot of us don't actually want control. We want distraction that feels like control, if that makes sense. We think chaos means living fully, but most of the time it just means living impulsively. And temperance flips that. It teaches you that peace isn't boring. It can be powerful. And stillness isn't weakness. It's awareness. And that restraint doesn't limit your life. It actually gives you more out of it. Temperance is self-control, but not in a cold way. It's emotional maturity. It's knowing your limits. It's choosing clarity over chaos. Or not thinking about being boring or no fun. It's about enjoying things without losing yourself to them. Temperance is saying, I want this, but I don't need it to survive. It's freedom from not being restricted to things. Because when you can walk away, you actually are in control. Temperance also changes how you see pleasure. Instead of chasing intensity, you start appreciating the quality that your life has. Instead of needing the constant stimulation, you learn how to be content in the quiet moments. You don't lose joy. You just sort of deepen it. You stop needing everything to feel so extreme. And you start finding meaning in simple things. A real conversation, a slow moment alone, a walk with your thoughts, the little things. And that's when you realize that temperance doesn't take from you, it gives you clarity. And if I'm honest, this one hits close to home. There were times in my life where I tried to numb the pain instead of feel it out. Late nights, bad habits, distractions, anything to avoid sitting with my thoughts. I know I bring this up a lot, but I had a major surgery on my knee, and a lot of things got heavy mentally and physically, more than I expected, right? I felt stuck, I felt frustrated, and I felt isolated. So instead of dealing with it, I leaned into comfort way too much. Scrolling, zoning out, avoiding responsibility, escaping from everything. Not because in the moment I wanted to destroy my life. I mean, nobody wants to. But because I didn't know how to sit with the discomfort. And looking back at it now, I realized temperance isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, about asking yourself, is this helping me or is it hurting me? And that perspective alone, that shift changed everything. And there were moments where I didn't even realize I was avoiding myself. I thought I was just unwinding, relaxing, whatever. But really, I was running away from my own mind. Temperance taught me something very uncomfortable. Sometimes the thing that you want most is the thing that is hurting you. And growth begins when you're brave enough to admit that. Not in a shameful way, but truthfully and honestly with yourself. And again, looking back now, I'm grateful that I learned this because control over my habits became control over my life. And I got to make my own decisions, live life how I wanted to live, without all the external things getting in the way. When a lot of people think of the word temperance, they think of alcohol abuse, right? Because, as we know, with every virtue, there's its evil counterpart, and in this case, it's gluttony. And as we know, gluttony isn't just food. It could be anything. It could be excess of literally anything. Attention, validation, dopamine, distraction, anger, pleasure, maybe even work. Too much of anything is bad for you. And gluttony kind of tells us that if a little feels good, a lot must feel that much better, right? But oftentimes, it rarely is. And it always starts out small. One extra scroll, one more drink, one more distraction, whatever it may be. And then suddenly, you're lost in those habits that you didn't even mean to build. Gluttony doesn't ruin your life overnight, as most things. It slowly replaces meaning with momentary pleasure. And before you know it, you start to feel empty, even when having everything, quote unquote. Because gluttony tricks you into thinking that you're filling a need or a void, when in reality, you're just feeding a wound. Maybe you scroll because you're lonely. You consume because you're anxious, or overindulge because you don't want to feel something painful, right? But no amount of more will heal what needs attention, right? The root of the evil, right? And that's why temperance is so important, because it forces you to face the problem instead of masking the symptoms. So what does that look like? Well, it can look like a lot of things. Temperance could be maybe just putting your phone down, setting it aside on purpose for an hour, right? Or leaving a situation before it gets out of hand. Stopping before you go too far emotionally or physically, right? Saying no to things that don't serve your future. Or choosing clarity over chaos, peace over impulse, growth over comfort. There's so many things. And I think the thing a lot of people don't realize is temperance is built in those small moments. And oftentimes you don't notice it at first, but every choice you make is important. Choosing to drink water instead of having another drink. Choosing to go to bed instead of staying up all night on your phone. Choosing to walk away instead of another argument. And none of these feel heroic, right? You don't feel like you did this big, super accomplishing thing, but they shape who you become. Because over time, you stop feeling controlled by the impulses and slowly start feeling aligned with your values again. And I'd like to say something real quick. If you feel like your habits are running your whole life, this virtue is your reset. You don't need to change everything overnight, but you just need to create a space between the impulse and the action. The pause is where the growth lives. Like I said, it might be boring or sucky in the moment, but in the long run, it'll all work out, because freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's choosing what truly serves you and what's better for you in the future. And if you've ever felt out of control, this virtue is for you. If you've ever overindulged and are regretting it, this virtue is for you. Temperance isn't about being perfect. I can't stress that enough. It's about being intentional. You don't need to eliminate all the pleasures from your life. You just need to learn how to enjoy it without it being your whole identity and losing yourself in the process. Temperance isn't about becoming less or being less. It's about becoming steady. And when you master your impulses, and that's when you gain real freedom. And it's different than the freedom where you can do whatever you want whenever you want, right? But freedom to choose what truly aligns with who you are and who you're becoming. Temperance doesn't make life smaller. It makes it more clear. When your mind is less chaotic, your purpose becomes louder. You start seeing what actually matters in your relationships, your goals, your inner peace, your faith even. And that clarity is a gift that most people never give to themselves. So remember this: you are not defined by your urges. You're defined by the choices you make every single day. So take a minute, pause before you act, think before you react, and choose before you consume. Because self-control isn't a punishment. I want you to look at it as protection. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for growing with me. Thank you for choosing balance over chaos, even when it's hard. Thank you for choosing restraint, not just for me, but for you and yourself and your future. Because every single small act of self-control is a vote for the person that you are becoming. And again, I know I've said it 5 times now, but you don't have to be perfect. This isn't about perfection. You just have to be intentional. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for growing with me. Thank you for taking the time out of your day, listening to me ramble, and choosing balance over chaos, and meaning over momentary pleasure. I think that's all I have for you today. As always, stay rolly.